What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Going for Two. I am Kejuannh Humphreys. For the first time in 25 years, the Indiana Pacers are going back to the NBA Finals. Another track meet in Game 6, a blowout, dominant second half, really, for the Indiana Pacers. And they really just took care of business, here at their home, at Gamebridge or Gamebridge Fieldhouse. I think that's what it's called, Gamebridge Fieldhouse. You know, the story of the team, the story of this game was the same as it's been all throughout the playoffs. This is a very deep team. They're going to play their style of play, and they're going to win games. You know, first half we saw Pascal Siakam really just, I would say, not keep them in the game because they were up, but he definitely put them in position to where they were just in front the whole way. For a good while, he was the only Indiana Pacer that was in double figures, and that just talks about how big he's been this whole series. He actually was just awarded the Eastern Conference Finals Player MVP. And I believe it has to go to him. You know, we talk about the big performances by Haliburton, especially in Game 4 and in Game 1, the big performances. But that consistency that Pascal Siakam was all throughout this series cannot go unnoticed. And then there were times where offensively this guy was carrying this team. You know, all throughout the series. We know about the 40 points in Game 2, the 31 points tonight. He was the only guy with double-digit shots in Game 5, even though it was a loss. Game 5 loss. Game 4, he also had himself a 30-point game as well. But he's just been the man. You know, I talked about earlier before the series started. I talked about who's the most important two in the conference finals. I'm sorry, and I said Pascal Siakam because he could easily be the one scoring wise. He's going to be the guy that's going to carry the load night in and night out on the offensive end, scoring the ball. And that's exactly what he did in this series, and he did it big time tonight as well. Now, in the midst of Pascal Siakam scoring, we saw the defense of the Indiana Pacers tonight turn it up a notch. You know, they played great defensively, and I got to shout out Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard did a masterful job defending Jalen Brunson tonight. Held him 8 for 18, didn't send him to the line too many times, kept him under 20 points in an elimination game, especially after the 32-point game performance he had in Game 5. Andrew Nembhard made things tough for him. 6 steals. 6 steals. You know, Nembhard is a guy that you would love on the squad. You would love him on the squad because he's a guy that can give you 15 or I would say 12, 13, 14 points on the offensive end and be a secondary ball handler on the offensive end. But a guy that gets after it on the defensive end, even when his shot is not falling, that's a very coachable guy. That's a guy you would love as a player to coach for, and that's a guy you would love to go into battle with. Andrew Nembhard, you know, he's not going to win MVP, but he was probably the most valuable player of the game tonight for his work on Jalen Brunson. Fourth quarter, we saw Tyrese Haliburton take over the ball game. I want to say he scored 11 points in the fourth quarter. Had a bunch of floaters, a bunch of assists. Had a deep dagger 3-ball to really put the game away in the final minute of the game. You know, Tyrese Haliburton continuing to silence the critics. You know, he received criticism from Game 5 for not being aggressive. You know, he had the smirk. He had the smirk on his face leaving Game 5 in the Garden. Said, okay, I'm going to come back home in Game 6 and we're going to see what the business is. I'll have my pops up in the suite in Game 6 and we're going to see what the business is. And for the first 3 quarters, he was not too great scoring the ball. But that fourth quarter, man, he said, fine, we got to put the game away. I'm going to do it myself. Coming off screens, I think he hit like 4 floaters in a row. They were just butter. No rim, just straight cash on the floaters. You know, now that is a testament to the defense that Karl Towns is playing, but you have to make the shot whether it's good defense or not. So shout out to Tyrese Haliburton. You know, this is a guy that can easily rise up in the rankings of when we have these best player in the world talks. You know, I'm not fully sure where I have him. I'll probably do a video later and like maybe in the off season talking about the best players or whatever. But I don't want to jump the gun and have a conversation right now because recency bias is a real thing. But I think this series and this playoff run has opened a lot of people's eyes as to how good this guy is. You know, last year he had his good year. Then this year he started out slow, but Starting out slow. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. We know that. We know that's the case. And the way he's played over the past month and a half in the playoffs has just been absolutely incredible, man. Shout out to him. Shout out to Tyrese Haliburton. So I want to get more into this game. Talk about the game. Talk about how the Pacers are going back to the finals and how they got the job done tonight in Game 6. People are not going to like what I have to say, because when I criticized Tom Thibodeau earlier in the series, people were going at me or whatever, disagreeing with me, and that's fine. You know, this sports, we're gonna disagree. But Tom Thibodeau in that second half coached a disaster class. He did. You know, there were several runs that put the Knicks behind almost 15 or so points. There was an 8-0 run that put them down 15. Thomas Bryant came and hit 2 threes. I didn't know he could shoot threes, but he came and hit 2 threes, put them down by 15 because Tom Thibodeau's letting his team bleed out. They come back, go on an 8-0 run, cut the game back to 9. Indiana responds back with another 9-0 run, go up by 18 points. No timeout. I just don't know what he's doing out there. You know, I know he's not an offensive coach, and you can tell because the way the offense looks. The offense, they're running out there with no plan. They're running out there with no plan, and then when shots are not falling and they keep turning the ball over, it just snowballs into a big deficit. You know, Mitchell Robinson played a great first half, was dominating the glass, protecting the paint, was thriving above the rim with his alley-oop dunks off the roll, and he barely played in the second half. You know, I feel like there was no reason why he's not on the floor as much in the second half, especially with Josh Hart not giving you too much on the court anyways. Josh Hart, this was a very bad Josh Hart game. Very, very bad. He only had 3 or 4 rebounds, only scored maybe 2 or 3 points, only took 3 shot attempts, and the shots that he took, the threes that he took, didn't even touch the rim. So if Josh Hart's not getting you nothing, take him out the game. Bring in Mitchell Robinson. That way y'all can at least dominate the game on the glass. You know? So Tom Thibodeau, we'll see. I think he'll still, no way he loses his job after making conference finals. No way. But they need to bring in somebody as an assistant to help him offensively because he has the weapons. You got Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. Them are 2 very dynamic offensive players. You can get something going on offense rather than just watching guys just run out there and freelance, just freestyle it. Because that's not going to work. As we saw tonight, and to be honest, even if they got to the finals, OKC might have did them worse. OKC thrives off them turnovers, just like the Pacers do. So, I can't really think about any moves that I would want to see them make, you know, to make their team better, except, you know, get more depth. You know, I think one thing I will give Tom Thibodeau credit for, he did go to his bench a lot more, especially later in this series. Landry Shamet gave him great minutes. DeLon Wright gave him good minutes, you know. So I would just focus on going out and getting more depth, you know. And I do like how the second unit played in the first half because Brunson got to have some good quality time sitting early in that second quarter. He didn't have to rush back in the game. But once he stopped playing them, then, you know, we saw what happened. You know what I'm saying? So I would just want them to go out and get some more depth, figure some things out. Just run it back. You got, you know, keep running it back until it hits. You know, until it hits or until something has to change. You know, Eastern Conference Finals appearance is not, you know, you don't blow things up because they don't go your way. That's not how it works. Yeah, you know, I also want to, I do want to give my prediction on the NBA Finals, but I'm going to hold that off. I'm going to give that its own separate video later, closer to Game 1. I want to watch some film, take some notes, get some thoughts on how the teams looked when they played each other in the regular season and how they're playing now, and see if, you know, there's anything different that I see. But I do want to say that it is actually very ironic how Paul George is indirectly responsible for both of these teams being in the NBA Finals between the Pacers and the Thunder. Paul George was traded from the Pacers to the Thunder. And what am I trying to say? The Pacers got back Oladipo, Sabonis, and other guys in the package. They traded Sabonis for Haliburton. Haliburton was in the package for Sabonis to the Kings. We know about the infamous Thunder Paul George trade where they get Shai Gilgeous and a bunch of picks that turn into like Jalen Williams and some other guys. So Paul George indirectly has been a big piece of both of these teams making the NBA Finals this year, and that is actually crazy. It's actually crazy for him because he has not made to the finals in his career yet, and both of the teams that he left have made it. So crazy when you look at that. Yeah, that's all I got for today, man. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, share with y'all folks. Going for 2. We out of here. Yeah.